Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. It's travel day and we're getting ready to roll out to our next destination, so I wanted to take just a few minutes and talk about our teardown checklist. It's very important to have some sort of a checklist, and a checklist that works for you and your process and how you set up and tear down. Angela and I kind of tackle everything as partners. She's got a list of things she does on the inside. I do most of the outside stuff, and of course we intermingle as the need arises. Whether you do it on paper or digitally, it really doesn't matter. As long as you have some sort of process that you follow every time, it becomes like second nature. You'll think you can do it in your sleep, but you should always refer back to the checklist. This is a clipboard that has some storage that I actually bought early on when I was keeping track of this by paper. I actually figured it out now that it's a lot easier just to use my phone. I use my phone for everything else, so I'm actually using the Notes app on the Apple iPhone. I'm sure Android has something similar, so we can actually go through and physically check things off as we go through our checklist. Shows us that black tank and gray tank 1 are full, and gray tank 2 is nearly full. So glad it's travel day. We're about to get cleaned up here and get ready to go, and most importantly, go dump on the way out. But you can definitely tell we're coming into the off season. It's 34 degrees and we just got off the quiet time. It's a little after 8 o'clock here, getting ready to go. So while Angie gets done doing some stuff on her list in the house, I'm gonna do some things outside and take you with me just as we're getting ready to go here. But you can kind of see our site. We have this big monster tree right here that goes all the way over the top of the rig. I'm gonna go around and check some tires and take my lock off the kingpin first and foremost, and just kind of work through the process here. So when I search out campsites, something that I look for is something with minimal trees, and the main reason for that is for our Starlink. Starlink really struggles, or it doesn't work at all in the trees. So, but the other reason is just cleanliness. I like having a clean camper, I like having a clean truck, and I don't like dragging a bunch of junk in the house to have to vacuum up. So you probably see us stay more at open campsites, not such a woodsy feel, and that's why. We have to work during the day, so we need the Starlink, and I like keeping things clean. So enough of my rant about leaves. Let's get to work. By the way, something you'll notice if you ever get a fifth wheel, and really in a bumper pull too if you use a weight distributing hitch, but especially with the fifth wheel, there's grease everywhere. So it's always good to have kind of a sacrificial pair of gloves to do things like work with the hitch, take your kingpin lock on and off. I tend to use a lot of grease. It just helps things work better, but it makes a mess at the same time. And Angela will be really happy because you all probably got to see me bump my head on the corner there, which I haven't done in a few weeks. So if the camera's on, I'm gonna hit my head on something. One thing I generally like to do before we leave is to put some water in the fresh water tank, just in case we have to stop and use the restroom, wash our hands, have a bite to eat, whatever. I actually had the tank full here because, like at a lot of campgrounds, our spigot leaked like crazy. So I've actually just been filling up the tank and running off of our water pump here. We can hold about 100 gallons of water. I think 96 is the number. So I actually filled up our freshwater tank on Wednesday. We've been using off of it since then, so I'm gonna go ahead and roll up my water hose, and that's one less thing I have to do when we get ready to go. Okay, now that we got our water hose ready to go and our kingpin lock off of our fifth wheel, the next thing I'm going to do is go around and check tire pressure. If you watched our previous videos, you know I have a TPMS system on the trailer so that I can watch it going down the highway. However, when it comes to the RV and the truck, I live by the mantra of trust but verify. So there's nothing like knowing for sure that your tires are up to snuff before you're ready to rock than a good old-fashioned commercial tire gauge. So we're just gonna unscrew the sensor. I do these one at a time because the sensors are matched to the wheel position. So I do this one at a time just so they don't get mixed up. We're right on the notch of 80 PSI. So that tire's good. Put our sensor back on. So while we're under here checking air pressure anyway, this is a great time to check the overall condition of the tire and take a look at your springs and your shackles and things like that. Make sure that you check your book for your manufacturer specifications on your lug nut torques. These are something that you should check periodically. Your owner's manual is going to tell you about how often you should check them. We check them every trip with the torque wrench. I've covered that before. Make sure that you're looking at the total visual condition of the tire. If you're looking at the sidewall right here, for any kind of cuts or any kind of big bubbles that are sticking out, any discoloration or any excessive cracking or any kind of peeling. The tread, you want to make sure you've got a nice even wear across the surface of the tire. If you're wearing out on the inside or more on the outside, that could be an inflation issue. You're running too much or not enough air pressure in your tire. If you're wearing to one side or the other, that could be an axle and alignment issue. If you've got intermittent flat spots on the tire, that might tell you that you have a weak spring or maybe a bearing going bad. Really, you want all four of the tires to wear exactly the same. They never will. Trailers are worse than cars even, and often the tires don't get rotated like they should. But you're looking for big discrepancies from one tire to the other, or from one section of a tire to the other. Also, while you're here, good time to look at your shackles, look at your springs, look for any kind of cracking around any of the welds, look for any kind of cracking in the springs. Just as a reminder, not part of this video, but make sure you're looking at your manufacturer specifications for how often you should grease the wet bolts on your springs and shackles. So we're just going to rinse and repeat this for the other 3 tires, and hopefully they're all at 80. And I don't have to crank this air compressor up this morning. So this isn't a total surprise, but since the temperatures have cooled down so much, the cold air pressure in the tires that was at 80 when we rolled in is now at about 76, but it's cooled off about 20 degrees from the last time I did an air pressure adjustment. So I'm gonna have to crank on this loud air compressor and put just a little bit of air in the tires to get us up to 80 before we take off. You can see how my air compressor setup is now. This one actually works great. It's just a cheapo from Harbor Freight, but it kind of fits in my dirty basement just so I can plug it in inside, but man, it's loud. Try to shut the doors on it just to keep some of the noise down for any neighbors that might be around while I wait on that to fill up. I usually have to fill it up one time to top off all the tires. Truck tires look good. I checked it this morning, so we're just gonna wait on some air, top off some tires. Okay, so we're all aired up to 80, and now the most fun part about airing up any tire is recoiling the air hose. Okay, so we got all our tires aired up to 80, we got our air hose put away. I went ahead and unhooked our 50 amp power cable. One of the nice things about camping in the spring or the fall is you don't need air conditioning 24/7, so I can actually unhook my cable well before it's time to go. The battery will take care of the auto leveling and the slides and running the furnace if it needs to kick on. So I've already got that rolled up, put in the back of the truck. I can hear Angie in there vacuuming the floor, so that means we're just about ready to go. I'm gonna climb up and do one of the last things I need to do outside before we hook up, and that's give a quick roof inspection, check for obstructions, and clear off any leaves or debris. We're just about ready to hop up on the roof and do our roof inspection and clean before we get ready to go. One thing I want to mention, this probably doesn't apply to everybody, but it applies to us. We actually have a receiver hitch on the back of our fifth wheel, and I use this little metal rack to tote my Traeger and the extra jug of gas and our generator. Make sure that all this stuff is tied down. I haven't used our generator or the Traeger, so all this stuff was already tied down from our last trip, but it's a good idea to make sure everything's tightened down and secure if you're carrying something on the back. And a good thing to do when you stop for gas is just walk back here and give it a quick pull. It doesn't take a whole lot of time for that extra check that may save you a headache down the road. Okay, it's time for roof inspection, and if I'm shivering, forgive me, because like I said, it's in the 30s and we got a little bit of a wind, and I'm barefoot. Why am I barefoot? This is some advice I got from the dealer on the very first RV we purchased. These are rubber roofs, and if you've ever seen the actual material, it's paper thin. So I always take my shoes off before I get up here just to make sure I don't carry a rock, piece of gravel, a stick, or anything up here that may damage the roof. It's probably overkill, but it's something I do. So while you're up here, you want to do a good visual inspection of the entire roof. You can see we've been under tree cover, hence why our Starlink doesn't work. So the roof's kind of nasty. Here in a second, I'll grab my electric blower and blow all this stuff off. If you're leaving during quiet hours or something like that out of a campground, be considerate, use a broom, but since we're getting to midday, we're not gonna bother anybody with the blower. See all this stuff here on top of our slide outs? If we don't blow that off, a good chunk of that's gonna come through the slide seals and into the RV. And with sticks and pine needles comes bugs and everything else. So we want to make sure our slide tops are completely clear. I actually blow off the entire roof of the camper. We want to go ahead and take this opportunity to look at all our seals. Again, check your owner's manual for how often roof inspections are required. I believe Grand Design says 6 months. This is something I actually do every trip. You want to look at things like, this is a vent for our bathroom. You want to look at this what they call lap sealant or self-leveling sealant, and make sure that you've got a good consistent seal. Make sure you don't have any pits or cracks or tears in that, and you're going to repeat that process all the way around the camper. Like for instance, our Max Air fan, along with all of our vents, have a lot of that self-leveling sealant around it, and you'll see they glob it on at the factory, and that's okay. I've actually been told the more the merrier. Glob that stuff on there, and when it starts getting too thick and brittle, you can peel off the bad stuff and replace it again. You cannot overseal. You can't over-inspect. You can't spend too much time on your roof, because if something's going to go wrong with an RV, a lot of times it's the roof. So we're looking around to make sure that nothing has come in contact with our ACs. So I'm looking for big cracks or big damage, like we hit a tree branch or something like that. Quick visual to make sure your nuts and bolts are tight. Give these things a little bit of a shake. Not much, just a little. The reason I say give them a little shake or a little tug test is because there's only 4 bolts that hold these ACs to the roof. They're heavy, but they're not super heavy. So if they're loose, they're gonna rattle. You're driving in the rain, you get water intrusion. You see where I'm going with it. So just check everything. Solar panel is really kind of easy. There's not much to check here. For the solar panel, we do have a spot here where our wiring comes out of the roof that's got sealant all around it. Just checking it, no cracks, nothing coming loose. And we're just going to continue to repeat for all the seals. Even our WindGuard TV antenna has lap sealant around it. Something that I've done, because I have had roof issues in the past, is I've actually taken a Teardown tape and went around all my vents. Except for the Max Air vent, I still need to do that one. So the reason I put the Teardown tape around all of our vents, and particularly on our front cap, we've had the issue before where our front cap started to separate at one of those seals that's just covered by the self-leveling sealant, kind of like household caulk, but it's not. So once we got the roof fixed, I went through and did a Teardown tape on all of our seams and seals, and then put silicone on top of that. It's just an extra layer to help protect the seals of your roof. And it also will cut down on some of that maintenance of constantly having to be walking around with the caulk gun to seal up what needs sealing. The roofs need more attention than you think, so make sure you're spending a good amount of time up here. Like I said, I do every trip, but that just makes me sleep good at night. But make sure you're following your manufacturer's recommendations and doing those roof inspections as needed. Okay, that pretty much does it for the outside. The last thing I'm going to do before we hitch up is go through and make sure we've got all of our side doors locked. Checking those real good. We're going to make sure all of our propane doors are latched good, along with our front door, and we'll rinse and repeat that for all those. I'll check them all one more time before we take off. Let's pop in the house and see how Angela's coming with her checklist. All right, babe, I got all my stuff done outside. What are you working on in here?
I've been picking up a little bit as we go along. You and I have our showers. We're done in the bathroom. The dogs have been bathed. Everything that we need to do, food, dishes, bathroom, it's done. So we know that we're not going to go back and reuse things. So I like to approach it in 2 ways, because there's really only 2 important things on the inside. It's secure the loose stuff and the floor, because you do have slide outs. If you have slide outs, the slide outs are going over those floors. Anything that's on them, it could cause damage. So I left most of the mess. I have done a little more deep cleaning, but the reality is you can do that when you land. You can do it before you go. It's whatever your process is. I did that this morning just because I knew that I had time to do it. But we're going to walk around. You're going to see it lived in. We live in them. And so we're going to be relaxed. We're going to toss our keys here. We're going to have dog beds and dog food bowls and blankets and 5,000 dog toys on the floor. So we're going to do a real quick walkthrough and get this thing wrapped up and rolling. So usually the bedroom's one of the first things that I do. I know Cody has all of his jackets, the shoes, the socks, everything he wants out of here, the drawers. we have set aside in the living room, and he knows he can't come back in here. Once the slide out is clean and we're good, we're going to pull the slide out in. But real quick, all I do kind of make the bed, make sure there's nothing over here. I want to make sure I get everything off the floor that's not going to hit that slide out. And the stuff on the dressers as well. We know this stuff isn't really solid, so our concern, and they're very tight because you want them secure while you're going down the road. So it's not uncommon for us to leave drawers and cabinet doors slightly open. So I'm going to touch everything at least once. Cody will come back through, and then I'm going to do a double check and make sure it's secure. So all we're going to do is take the stuff from the counter, from the dresser, put it on the bed. I want to touch all the drawers. I want to make sure my closet is secured, and we're done. So the bathroom doesn't take very long, but it has a lot of parts and pieces, and so I'd spend a little more time in here. Obviously, cabinets, we're gonna make sure everything's shut. Anything loose on the counters, we're gonna do something with that. And then the shower. I've seen people that just dump it in the floor. I'm afraid it might scratch, and so we just put all of our shower items in here. Secure it the best way we can. It's a little more secure in the back. It's a little tighter. That's just a really cheap online shower caddy. It works for us. And then when we get stopped, we pull it all out. We can fold it up and stick it away somewhere. So the two important things in here are the door, which we'll pin back, and the shower. I thought that I was closing this. I thought that I was latching it. And then Cody showed me that I wasn't quite getting that second click in there. So this one's important. I've seen a lot of these shattered online. It's just as simple as securing that latch back. I do give the shower head a little extra press to make sure it's locked in there. Sure everything's closed. Most everything in here, we don't have slide outs, we don't have any moving parts. I don't worry so much about these things on the floor. I have a really lightweight Clorox toilet cleaner. So far I haven't had any issues with it falling over. It doesn't have any water or wet brushes in it. And then the toilet paper caddy, I do lay that down on the floor. There's nothing that it can hurt. There's nothing closing here. So the door is pretty important because you don't want this sliding and banging with every bump. And there's plenty of those. So we're gonna make sure that we get this latched back so that as it hits, it's gonna catch. So we do have towels everywhere. It's kind of where we collect all of the wet towels. We like to open this vent up to get some ventilation, keeps it from getting stale. It helps with the humidity in here. So I just use it as an opportunity to dry out my towels while we're going down the road. And then when we land, we can always pull them down. So all of these, we're gonna junk it up in here, but otherwise we're gonna get it secured. I'm not worried about the bathroom after this. So the kitchen living room is a little more extensive. The biggest thing in here is just securing the loose things, and there's a lot of loose things. Most of these things, they ride. I know they can ride, so I don't worry about what may be in the cabinets because we haven't had an issue so far. There are a few cabinets that do change. There are a few things. One is the pantry. We have different types of foods. So I always take a peek in here, just make sure everything looks okay. If something falls, what's it gonna hurt? Fridge is the same way. We have different types of foods. There's things that fall that you're not thinking, oh, I forgot that I put this container up there, a glass container up the very top. So I always take a good look at the fridge and make sure that I feel comfortable with it going down the road. And then we have a few loose items over here with just a few decorations that always go in the same place. So they have their place in the cabinet. for when we go down the road too. So one thing today, it is raining. It's been raining all night and all morning. Our slide outs on the outside are wet. So we do try to clean them a little bit before they come into the camper, but there's always something. It's kind of squeegeeing the rain a little bit. So I do take a little extra time with those and see if I can dry some of it off at least, and make sure there's nothing dripping on the floor. We have a lot of loose things like the recliners and a dog. We have these extra little cup holder things that like to bounce out because they're light. We have remotes, and we don't want those getting stuck under something and us missing it. So that's usually something that I'll just kind of toss in the console. We'll put that blanket away. We have chairs. We do have the strap that secures the chairs, but these can still rub. You usually take old jackets or hoodies, toss them over the top, and that just gives a little extra padding in there. We have other things that are going to have to be secured and put away. I'm going to do that first. We have dog beds, a water bowl, and a dog food bowl that will have to be secured. The toys, we're going to have to devise a ruse to distract them so that we can run those back and put those up. And then the dog food bowl, I have a plastic container. I usually I'll just kind of secure it on the top of that so that when I land, I still have their bowl of dog food, and then their water bowl rides with us. Last but not least, kitchen area. The sink is cleared out. I'm going to go ahead and take our strainer.
Are you feeling abandoned?
I take our strainer, I secure it into the sink. I have a mat under there so I don't worry about anything scratching. Everything else looks pretty good here. I have my glass candle, one of the few glass things that I have in this camper. I'm going to secure it in one of our pantry boxes where I know it'll be held. A fruit bowl. Usually I take some tall things in the front of the pantry. I shove that sucker back in there and I just secure it. It just needs to ride until we stop. My reminder to secure the fridge before we go down the road. So that just keeps the fridge doors from coming open in transit. So that's done. This is Cody's universal sign that this is clean. I don't remember where this goes. So I know that this is ready to go up wherever it usually sits. And then fruit bowl, we'll put it away. I'm gonna do my run through and get out of here.
Okay guys, we're all packed up and ready to hit the road. Hopefully going through our checklist helped you out a little bit. Hopefully if you don't already have one, it inspired you to create a checklist of your own. There's a ton of good ones out there. If we missed something, let us know in the comments, or maybe we brought something to your attention that you never thought of. Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. We've had a really good run of new subscribers here lately and some really good reactions to some of our later videos. We appreciate it. We're really excited about it. And we're just even more committed to bringing you guys the absolute best content that we can. That's it for us today. We're about to hook up and get on the road, and we will see you next week.
See you later.
Try not to travel in the rain, but sometimes it can't be avoided, so I'm gonna roll this up. A lot of times these steps will keep dripping even though I wiped what I could off of them. Just gonna lay that right there, and that way if it drips, it gets on the towel and not the floor. We're about ready to hook up. Rhino hose. It actually has the outlet already on there, which is kind of different. See how tight that rolls up? That's a 15-foot hose.
Nice.
And then I'll show you a 15-foot green Rhino. Normally I just hook two hoses together at a Y, so I don't use both dump tanks here. But since there's nobody really around, I'm going to save getting that third hose out. Put that down. Got our flush going. Notice I put a little black tape around this hose because this is my dedicated flush hose, and then I've got a dedicated clean hose. But you never want to use those flush hoses for drinking water, washing dishes, or anything like that. So that's my dedicated black hose. So I'm just going to pump a little water out of the tank into the black tank, flush everything out really well, and then we'll get the gray and we'll be done. Start draining a little bit. Most states will ticket you if you don't have the cap cover on. Believe it or not, if you have a leak, that will keep the water in right here, so make sure that you do that. The other thing is I went ahead and put extra valves on here. Even though our pull valves are either up here for the back or inside for the gray and the black tank, I put an extra valve here, that way if we have any seepage, it catches it so you don't get unpleasant things all over your hand as you're dumping. These orange Rhino hoses, this is a 15-foot hose. And when you squish it in, it actually holds its shape, unlike my green ones that really don't. Those hoses are fine too. On paper, and this is something that I actually started doing